Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. When people are seeking the truth, there is a self confrontation that has to take place. If you really want to be a truther, somebody who is, seeking the truth, then you have to confront yourself and your own prejudice and your own point of view, especially things specific to you and the groups that you identify with and belong to, people who you associate with and friends and things like this. And so I'm going to get into stuff with Israel. I've already started this video. I'm going to get into the Red Out Fail with Charlie Kirk, but I wanted to start here. And this voiceover is for people watching, listening to this on the Journey series. The previous voiceover is something I did earlier, but it's going to be later in this video about Israel and these other things. And so you see this with pro sports when the crowd boos the referees and think they're getting screwed. But when the referees make a call that's wrong for the other team, they don't care, right? So the home team sees a replay and they see a pass interference that wasn't called, or one that wasn't a pass interference was called on their team, and they boo the refs. But if they show a replay in which the other team gets screwed, they're like, yeah, great. We don't care. We don't care about how fair the officiating is. Like, so, but they feel like victims. They feel like the referees are out to get them, and they boo and do all these kind of things, right? So when I was making videos of Britney Spears, I was making videos where I mocked celebrities. And I started making videos mocking Britney Spears, and people told me what an asshole I was, and she had been sexually abused, and why didn't I have any compassion for her as I made fun of her. And I said, where were you when I was making fun of Lady Gaga, who says she was sexually abused, and Cardi B, when she was sexually abused, or any number of these celebrities that were liberal, right? You only had a problem with my behavior. You liked it when I mocked Joe Biden, but you didn't like it when I mocked Donald Trump the same way. You said that I had Trump derangement syndrome when I did it to Trump, but when I did it to Biden, my videos were great and I was a great person. Or all these people who said, well, I really loved you until you said this one thing that I disagree with, and now I know you're a shill, right? And so what I said to them is, you're not against the behavior. You weren't against me mocking. You're not against the mocking. You're against the subject, and only a person that you identified with. Because Britney Spears is a Southern white girl, and you identify with her because of whatever your upbringing and your group is. And people excuse people in their life for doing horrific things, make excuses, but then when it's the enemies, when it's the liberals who are doing it, they want justice, right? They want to see Hillary Clinton get locked up, but they don't want to see Donald Trump get locked up, right? Like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump all did mishandled documents, right? Classified documents. And the liberals, Trump was the only one convicted of it, but that conviction just disappeared because it wasn't fucking real. But, like the liberals were fine with that. They were fine with it. They said, oh, no, there's differences. No, there are no differences. They all mishandled classified documents. Trump was the only one who was prosecuted. But you see, it's the same thing with Trump, who he was against censorship when it was happening to him, and he was deplatformed. But now he's censoring the left. And you see this all the time in people where they are, like I said, making excuses and defending or denying something that's right in their fucking face. Because it's not like they're against these types of behaviors or against any of these things. They just think that their side should get special privileges and the other side should be held to a higher standard than themselves. And then people do this individually where they are, critical of other people and don't think about the ways that they're doing the exact same thing. I mean, the hypocrisy is off the charts, as one great man once said, that Don Lemons. The hypocrisy is off the charts. I'd show it, but I'm doing a voiceover. So there are certain terms in the psychological world, like why you give yourself permission to do things. You give yourself permission to do something because of victim consciousness, right? You make excuses, rationalize things, give yourself permission. Something bad happened to me, or this person deserves it, or when you're doing wrong behavior, giving yourself permission to do something wrong. and not holding yourself to any sort of discipline or standard or accountability, which is all part of being a truthful person, right? And so, the things about me personally, um, because I meditate, like I know when I'm bullshit myself and, whatever. Like it's just there. I meditate and do cleaning every night. And I think about things I said or whatever it is that are, hypocritical. It's just, things are just there. If you're connected to divinity, God will show you things. I mean, God's trying to show you and warn you and help guide you back on the right path all the time. Like that's happening all the time. That's part of your experience. Consequences are there to help you to see that you're going in the wrong fucking direction. You keep on ignoring them and pretending and justifying your mistakes, and through pride or shame or embarrassment or whatever it is that you're unwilling to admit to yourself even that you're making a mistake and not being honest about it, right? There's a meme that I'll put in for my regular video after this voiceover. I won't do it on the Journey series, but it's a Ben Affleck movie where he talks about how they're going to go kill a guy and rob him, a drug lord, and like let's not pretend that we're not doing the crimes. We're going to commit one murder and we're going to commit one robbery. Let's not bullshit ourselves. Which is a great scene because it's like the guy is a drug dealer, and so killing the guy isn't a bad thing, and taking his money, that's drug money, isn't a bad thing, but don't pretend that it's not a murder and a robbery, right? It's a great scene from that movie. I just put it I put it on my timeline of the video I'm making so I won't forget about it. But, so personally, like I have that thing with the meditation. But even with that, it's a battle because everyone wants to like see themselves as the hero and, all these things. You want to, blame everybody else and not look at your fault in the relationships you have and not take accountability, responsibility for your mistakes and your difficulties, your personality characteristics that are difficult for other people. Another thing that I had was after spending time with my older brother and then visiting my family, I realized why people didn't like me, right? Like I could see myself in my family members. And then, I guess in my kids and these other things, things that they had, tendencies. And I could see, why it was off-putting to some people and because it was off-putting to me and things that were, not that it was like self-hatred, but I understood that. Even when I'm listening to my videos and things like that, and there's good energy in the videos, like I feel the transmission things, I still am like, when will this guy shut up, right? So like I can irritate myself, right? Like when I'm listening to things. So like I get it, like I understand why, people are repulsed by me or whatever it is. Not everybody, but some people. And you don't have to say, no, I'm not. And, it's not, I'm not fishing for compliments. I'm saying I understand like these things because I look at it in a different way. And then organizationally, for those of you who don't know, I do the Sajmarg meditation, and the organization was, pretty much impeccable for something that had people in it. And the masters of the system were, so service-oriented. They weren't like, you couldn't really even question their commitment to God and their commitment to the members of the mission. The amount of effort they put in, especially the one I knew, Master Charji, the third master of the system. The guy traveled 200 days a year and gave, so many of these sittings, and he worked all the time, like tirelessly. And, I saw it, and people who were around him said, yeah, he slept like 2-3 hours a day, and the rest of the time he was working on this volunteer job, a job he didn't get compensated for. And, so much work that he did spiritually, and then all the written material, all the talks he gave, all these things that he did. So he was constantly giving of himself, right? And so when that organization, the fourth master, turned it into a pile of shit, he changed the name to Heartfulness, and he went against all the principles. And, it took me a while because I knew the guy, Kamlesh, and he was a good preceptor, a good member of the system. And I had some really good interactions with him, and I thought he'd do a great job. But he just shit the bed. And even though I saw divinity in him, I had some good experiences with him. And I had every reason to believe that he would be a successful fourth master of the system. And him crapping out, the whole system that I believe was given by God to be a solution to the problems of the world because it helps people become better people. only spirituality will save this world. That comes from Saj Marg, and I 100% believe it. And so it was a very difficult thing for me to go through, you guys who were there for that. That happened in 2022, 2020. It happened over a 4-year period where I realized that it was turning into a cult, and it was fucking difficult. But I didn't run away from it. I didn't deny it. And, I was in some level of denial because, I had I had seen, the spiritual work that this guy Daji had put into becoming the fourth master, the work that it was done on him. So it wasn't like I only had one side of the story. I had both sides. But, when I realized that he just fell, and he fell spiritually, and he just, he shit the bed, then it was like, well, that's what it is, right? And it was painful, but I had to accept it, and I had to do it, I did it in a public way because it needed to be done that way. But I'm saying, like, for me, that would have been my people, my group, but I recognize the issues with the people there and myself and everyone else. Even though it's a great system, that doesn't mean the people are somehow greater or better. That in lesser organizations, religions that suck and don't connect you to God, like Sahaj Marg is a much more effective spiritual system, that doesn't mean the people are better. The people are better for being in the system because the system works better than other systems. But that doesn't mean the people are, somehow they deserve it, right? They got lucky and they got, this gift like anything else, but that doesn't mean you deserve it. And you should never think you deserve the things you get. Like, everybody deserves God's love, but not because we earned it, right? Just because it's available to everybody and God gives it freely. And so, these are things to think about in terms of, you see it all the time. And the people who want to believe in Erika Kirk or want to believe in Charlie Kirk or want to, these right-wing people who want to believe in Donald Trump, they see the evidence. They want to believe in Joe Biden. They want to believe in Kamala Harris. They want to believe in, George Clooney, whatever it is, right? They want to believe in Taylor Swift. They want to believe in Justin Bieber. And no matter what they see and what evidence there is, they're not leaving them. They have this blind loyalty that isn't positive because it comes with a lot of denial and, desperation and delusionment. So, like, it's not that when you tell people and you show them the evidence that they don't see it or get it. They just reject it because they want reality to be something different, and they're not being honest with themselves and, everyone else. So it's a battle to be that way. It's a battle to be objective, and it's a battle to see things in a divine truth is painful. It's painful about yourself, and it's painful about other people in your life and everybody else, right? Divine truth isn't, you can't spin it. It's the absolute truth is just the truth. And you can't, there's no, you don't have any influence on that, what the truth is. It's just simply there. And those people who can experience it, in the Mahabharata, I want to end with this. There is, Krishna comes in, is incarnated, Vishnu, this cosmic functionary of preservation. People think that all these religions are just for the religion because of prejudice. This is what I'm talking about. But, like, all these religions have teachings in them that are for everybody. Like, if Jesus didn't come just for potential Christians, Krishna wasn't here just for Hindus. These beings come down, and these spiritual movements that are coming down with them are here for everybody, and they're here to improve humanity and help us evolve, mostly spiritually, in terms of our level of development. And that's why higher developed beings come down and incarnate. And so there is destruction, creation, and preservation in everything. And the Hindus call it Shiva for destruction, a soul that's behind destructive energy, like a being, and Vishnu for preservation, and Brahma for creation. And so, like, whether you call them by those names, there is a soul that's behind, there's a consciousness behind everything in the universe. And for creation, destruction, and preservation, there's a soul, an entity that can expand throughout the universe and be in charge of the consciousness behind preservation and destruction and these things. And so Vishnu is the name that the Hindus give to this being. And he has incarnated like 10 times or over the history of the world, these various times. Two of those times are Rama and Krishna, which are known, documented in the Hindu religion. And when he incarnated as Krishna, and when he incarnated, he would come down as a soul who was Krishna, Narayana, and as a ego as his character named Arjuna, who was Nara. So there's Nara and Narayana, and they were these like a twin soul. And Krishna and Arjuna were the best of friends. And Krishna was always explaining things to Arjuna, who was his soul explaining things to his ego. And they're about to start the battle, and Arjuna's the like only really good archer. Like they had these divine powers and all these things. And he was like the best guy on his team, which was the good guys, the Pandavas. And he had to kill his beloved teacher, his beloved uncle, relatives, friends. Like there was all these people on the other side that he was in charge of killing, and they were people he loved. And he like breaks down on the battlefield, and he's like, I can't fucking do it, right? And so Krishna says, okay, and shows him his divine essence, right? He shows him like all his divinity and, all the things that he's been involved in centuries. And, this is where the guy Oppenheimer said, I have become death. Oppenheimer tries to recant this story, but he doesn't really know this story, right? But Krishna shows him his divine essence. And Arjuna's like, holy shit, and gets freaked out, and he goes, okay, I'll go kill whoever you want me to fucking kill. Just don't ever show me that again, right? And so people don't want to see the divinity within them. They don't want to see the divine truth. I've said this time and time again. People are scared of their demonic side, but they're a lot more scared of their soul and their divine side. They're scared of the divine being that they can become. And that's why there's a apprehension about all that. And they're scared of real truth. And so that's why you don't get real truth in the truth community and all these other things. Anyways, I wanted to preface this video. Let's get into the other things here.
Make no mistake about it. What we're about to do is criminal. We do not have the flag on our shoulders, and no amount of bullshit that we tell ourselves is going to change that. If we do our job right, we will be committing one murder and one armed robbery.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Wednesday, October 15th, 2025. I want to start here. I think I'm going to do a voiceover. I wanted to do one yesterday for this video, and I kind of remember it. I didn't get a chance to do it last night, and so hopefully I'll do it today or tomorrow, and you would have already listened to that. But either way, this is a good place to start. So remember this Knesset thing? It's funny. Remember this Jabba the Hutt looking MNFer said that he was the best friend in the White House Israel's ever had, because that's what Bibi always says. And he said that America has crazy weapons, horrific weapons, and he's not afraid to use them in a non-political correct way. And he gave Netanyahu all of those weapons, all of them that Netanyahu asked for, even some that weren't even created yet. He created them for Netanyahu to use in the Gaza Strip. And he's wearing a blue tie. He's wearing a red tie. Netanyahu blue tie. The two houses of the Freemasons. And so anyways, that was kind of a lot of big reveals about that. There's a big reveal about Trump coming up where he says that he's probably going to hell in a joking way, but maybe not. But Bibi says this.
Rescued 8 live hostages and brought back the remains of dozens more. But as time went on, we all know what happened. The diplomatic pressure was turned on its head. More and more governments bought into Hamas's false propaganda. More and more governments succumbed to anti-Semitic mobs in their own countries. They just turned on Israel. They called for us to...
They just turned on Israel, right? Now, to say that everybody fell for anti-Semitic Hamas propaganda. Hamas is not a government, and they don't have... You think Hamas controls the American media or the American collegiate institutions? I mean, we know Israel has lobbying groups, some of the best lobbying groups in the world, the best, in America and has the Anti-Defamation League. What's the Hamas version of the Anti-Defamation League? I mean, he's saying this to his own people, but it's going out to Americans, right? So, I mean, the insult to our intelligence here, right? To say that somehow I've ever heard some Hamas propaganda or Iranian propaganda, like these countries don't have the kind of organization and money. They don't get that. They haven't gotten $1 trillion from the U.S. over decades in assets that they can spend back in the U.S. to make sure they get more. They're living off us like a parasitic welfare state. And he has the fucking, and control the media. And he's talking about buying TikTok. Can Hamas buy TikTok in their little sewer holes they live in? Hamas is an Israeli asset, so they even have that, right? So for him to say that, that's so fucking, that, I mean.
More and more governments succumb to anti-Semitic mobs in their own countries. They just turned on Israel.
They just turned on Israel. Like, it's just talking about like you just didn't turn a whole 20-mile region where 2 million people live, unarmed 2 million people live, innocent civilians by even Jared Kushner standards, and just bomb the shit out of their city and turn it into rubble. And now you guys are going to build some fucking Trump-esque resorts there, whatever the fuck you're going to do on American taxpayer dime or whatever it is, right? So, like, the fucking inside, unbelievable. Like, playing the victim after all that shit, right? The horrific thing that we all saw. Just turned on Israel, right? Just turned on Israel.
This is false propaganda. More and more governments succumb to anti-Semitic mobs in their own countries. They just turned on Israel. They called for us to surrender to Hamas demands, just leave Gaza immediately, they said, end the war without...
No, it had nothing to do with Hamas demands. It had to do with common human fucking decency. No one cared about what happened to Hamas, some assholes, the guys who are your assets. Like, no one cared about that. They wanted you to stop killing kids over there. That wasn't about, you were killing kids and fucking destroying people's houses and infrastructure and all those things, taking over this land and doing a fucking land grab. That's what they were about. I mean, and even in his own country, he gets booed. Like, we saw that, right? And so...
committing to disarm Hamas without committing to demilitarize Gaza. Had Israel succumbed to those demands, not only would Sinwar, Nasrallah, Assad, and Iran's missile and nuclear program remain intact. Not only that, because in no time...
Yeah, so you won, right? We get you fucking won, but don't fucking play the victim. You killed a bunch of unarmed people, and you had America bomb Iran for you. Fucking whoopee-doo. You're great. Right? And so just the victim consciousness is off the charts here. Okay, so I also mentioning red. There was no red out for Charlie Kirk. I want to get to that. That's great. No one honored that bullshit stuff. But we'll come back to that in a moment. Let's go to this other thing about Israel.
You are falling into Israel's trap.
I am? I'm falling into Israel's trap? Okay, dude wearing a Corona shirt. Tell me how... right here. Tell me how I can not fall. What can I do to not fall into Israel? What can I do, bro? What trap am I falling into? You're falling into Israel's trap.
Israel wants anti-Semitism to spread. If Israel's occupation of Gaza was really for territory or about exterminating the people of Gaza, they could have done it in weeks. They
I don't believe in that.
Could have had that over with. It has nothing to do with the territory or the people of Gaza. They want anti-Semitism to spread so the lawmakers that they pay off in America and all over Europe will push laws against free speech and against criticism of Israel so their next plan can be put into place with full force with no public backlash. That's why they're buying all the media outlets and all of social media.
Okay. The part where it says without no public backlash, there would be a ton of public backlash. This sounds good, right? There's parts of it that make sense. I'll get to that. Let me move over to a voiceover when I'm done with this.
It's the same thing they did with 9/11, with the NSA, the TSA, and now the formation of the Real ID. It is all a plot to take away our free speech and to take away our rights as people.
You're falling into Israeli trap. That's the first thing to remember. Okay, him saying that we're falling into Israel's trap. It implies that by speaking out and telling, exchanging information now, you're creating a situation where they'll take away your right to criticize Israel. But what he implies here is we should stop criticizing Israel so they don't take the ability to criticize them away, which is silly, right? And so I've often said that there's been a lifting of an unwritten rule that you couldn't criticize Israel. It was not specific, like you couldn't, Israel fell into the category of groups of people you couldn't say shit about, which was there were quite a bit of them. These were the protected groups. And Israel and Jews were some of that group. And so, you could say some things, but it was, you was always walking some fucking fine line and whatever with all these community guidelines. And then out of nowhere, plus the CNN and MSNBC and politicians never criticize Israel. Fucking never. And those who did, they lost their seat, right? So there's videos out there of Cynthia McKinney. If I remember, I'll play one after this voiceover. And she talks about how Israel took her seat, so that she didn't sign the pledge. She didn't sign the pledge that all politicians have to sign to defend Israel and support Israel's right to defend itself. So they took her seat, right? They took her, I wonder what happened to her, but they took her, they dumped $1 million into her opponent's campaign fund, and she lost her seat. She was in the House of Representatives. Remember, she questioned Donald Rumsfeld after 9/11 for them losing $7 trillion or $7 billion or whatever it was. It was a crazy amount of money that just disappeared from the Pentagon. They just lost all this money. It was crazy, and then and then 9/11 happened. They announced it on 9/10. Charlie Kirk's now death day, but on 9/10 they announced, hey, we lost $9 trillion, and then 9/11 happened. It disappeared, but she asked about it, and now she's gone. Right, a few other people I saw who wouldn't sign the pledge talked about what happened to their political career when they didn't. So you weren't allowed to criticize Israel. The media never talked about Israel in a derogatory way, and politicians never criticized Israel, and now it's all over the place, right? And so what this kid is saying, that's what Israel wants, because they're going to use all this criticism to put laws into place to censor you. The problem with that is the information's out. And it's a lot of young people on the right and young people on the left. Now, I was talking to my wife about this. She hadn't heard a lot of the talking points, a lot of the things, not talking points, but a lot of the truther stuff about Israel. Like, she hadn't heard it because it wasn't available. Lots of people hadn't heard it. But now you have, because everyone in the truth community, most people are talking about it. People on the right and the left, and young people. I've talked about this with 9/11 for me. Pizzagate for some of you, some COVID for some of you, right? It's the thing that sort of wakes you up. There'll be an event where you realize that the official story is bullshit. And that thing that wake you up, it's always kind of like a open wound where you want to see justice. Like the part that, that you thought something was going to happen before you realized that it's all controlled and, all that shit. And, you thought that maybe there'd be something that would come out and people would understand it. You tried to get people to listen to some video or, your whatever you had to say about it, your sheeple friends and family. And that thing for lots of college kids is Israel. That first thing, it's like your virgin waking up thing. It always sticks with you. And so for kids, a lot of these kids, it's Israel. Democratic kids and now Republican kids. And so they're going to grow up with this, like they're just not going to be satisfied with the outcome of this. And when they take their ability away to criticize this, country, this foreign country, and they do it publicly, because before it was done in a way that it wasn't spelled out. It was just like an unwritten rule that it's something that you couldn't do. And it's in society as well. Like anybody who criticized Israel would get blood libel, all this kind of things publicly, and any celebrity, you just couldn't do it, right? And you couldn't say things like Israel and Jewish people controlled the media and the financial system. You couldn't say that. That they have a, for 1% of the population, they have a disproportionate amount of jobs in control of Hollywood, in control of the news corporations, right? The people who are CEOs of these various people, like Bob Iger, who runs Disney. That Disney controls ESPN and controls all these things. They were people who were very anti-vaxxers. Remember, Disney was very explicit about making it mandatory, and all their employees had to knuckle under. Even one woman who was wanting to get pregnant, she didn't want to take the vax, and they fired her. On ESPN, all these things, right? People like Rupert Murdoch and the rest of these guys who run these big media mega corporations are owned by Jewish people. The Rothschilds family owns all these banks, right? It's something where you really couldn't talk about that. And like they made you, like it was gaslighting, because they'd say, no, that isn't true. And you'd be like, well, look at these people, you can look up the people and you can Google them. And it says that they grew up and they're Jewish, right? And so, they had all this stuff in media, and Yahoo's pushing for Jewish-owned TikTok. Of course, Facebook is owned by a Jewish guy, and the rest of these other corporations. And so, has Israeli influence. And it was there, but it was hidden. But now it's out in the open. And when Netanyahu's just out in public saying we got to buy TikTok and we got to censor people, and they started to remove emojis and things like this. And so all these young people, they know. They didn't have a way of knowing before, but having this short period of time where all the information comes out, maybe it's intentional, probably could be intentional, but if they're trying to censor with laws, now you put in laws saying you can't criticize Israel or anything to do with it, right? And you can't bring up these truths. The information is already out there. It's just going to piss people off. You're going to be suppressing their freedom of speech, and it's going to be this big thing. So if they're going to take an iron fist to America and say, hey, we're showing you how much we own you guys, the backlash will be off the charts, right? And who knows where that'll lead, or maybe, but it's not better than it was. It's much better when you do it as an unwritten rule. There's no law, there's no, there's nothing there. So if they are setting some sort of a trap here, this kid's saying that it's like 9/11. No, because very few people were criticizing 9/11 and doing they didn't suppress that. And, the people who are truthers, the 9/11 truth people, you could say whatever you wanted for a long time. It wasn't until the election of Trump's election with the fake news that they started to censor people. It wasn't until 2015. That's 14 years after 9/11. And so during that period of time when YouTube was, taking off, and these other social media platforms, you could say whatever you want. There was no censorship at all. I mean, practically, just on the kind of things that should be censored, like just horrific things. But you could say anything about these various things up until the fake news stuff in the Trump election, when censorship really started to kick in 2016, 17, 18, where you saw a change in these policies, right? So, this kid's off base on these things. And if it is a trap by Israel, it's a stupid trap, because, now the information's gotten out there, and a lot more people are against Israel than before. It's over 50%, and most of those people are young people. And so the older people, as they die out, the younger people are growing up, many of them who are Jewish, who have a much more negative opinion about Israel. And so many Jewish young people. So this is, it's not good for them. It's not a good strategy, right? And if they do impose some sort of law, it'll be, done over the top, unless they want to show Americans how much they own them. And so, either way, it's it's silly. The whole thing's silly. This kid saying that, you're falling into a trap, because you might as well get the information out now while you can, right? That's the way it's always been. Getting the information out before COVID, to whatever extent, then when they start creating community guidelines after the fact, it sucks. You have to go back and delete all your videos, but at least you got the information out there when you could. That's part of what everyone's supposed to do. And so this is kind of silly. I do remember, though, when the Me Too thing was happening and all these, the Black Lives Matter was happening, the Jewish community was kind of upset that they weren't getting enough attention. And there started to be these false flag type things that started happening to make the Jewish people seem like victims again. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. They're worried about other people stealing their thunder about victim consciousness. I don't know. But either way, there's either you censor yourself now or you get censored later. It doesn't matter. There's no trap here. Either that's going to happen or it isn't. So somebody put this up on Facebook. I think Americans are good, but Americans will be taken over and destroyed from the inside by the Zionist lobby. The Americans do not see this. They are getting decadent. Zionists will use this to destroy them. Muammar Gaddafi, 1986. I heard maybe somebody posted this on comment, and I heard this yesterday. If a family got kicked out of 100 hotels and you owned a hotel, would you let them stay in the hotel? And so, there's this idea that lots of people who dislike Jewish people, it's because it's Christians who think that they murdered Christ or any number of reasons, whatever reasons Muslims have for it. And it's unfair criticism and prejudice, right? But now there's a lot of people who hate Israel or dislike Israel. Some of them even Jewish people living in America, young people too, a lot of them, who are dislike Israel because of this, right? And when Netanyahu got out there and started saying that shit he just said, he's so unlikable. And if they start pushing for suppression and free speech and start, all this stuff, calling us crazy, calling everybody the far right, like all the people on the right who are criticizing Israel, and Charlie Kirk being called anti-Semitic and his people, and that's out there, and those clips of him, those were some of his last clips, things that he was in the message he sent out before he died. Like all these people are connecting Israel to all this stuff. Somebody sent me this thing on Tucker Carlson. I'll show you that next. So when you get called anti-Semitic for just criticizing a country and hateful and how you're all fucked up and you guys are delusional and Israel's great. And the people who talk about Israel, like RFK Jr. is as much of a truther as you're going to see. He can articulate truther points on lots of subjects, many of them controversial. But the guy is the worst on Israel. It's embarrassing how much he's a taint licker. Like it's just, it makes him, it destroyed him as a credible person. Like he was, good, doing good interviews, and he had a lot of, in terms of a politician, he was as truther as you're going to get. And, at least in terms of his ability to express these things. There's one thing to be someone seeking the truth. There's another thing in being able to express truther narratives. Trump's not that good at it. Like Trump tried to do it, and he did enough that people liked it, but Tucker Carlson's better at it. At the ones that he's willing to go there. Tucker Carlson, so much of his stuff is bullshit, like I just covered in that last video. But these people who are mainstream media people, mainstream politicians, mainstream celebrities, they, when they start talking about truther stuff, only some of them are good at it, and Kennedy was great, but his stuff on Israel was horrible. When Charlie Kirk stuff on Israel is so, imaginary and not believable, and most of it stemmed from biblical rights, like biblical land rights that Charlie Kirk claimed Israel had from some bullshit book in some Old Testament book, that was a religion that Jesus left behind him when he became a spiritual person. You graduate out of your religion, right? Swami Vivekananda, religion's a great thing to be born into, but a horrible thing to die in. And so, all of these things make it, bad for Jewish people when, just regular Jewish people living in America or other places, when Zionists come in and they just piss everybody off and, create a stereotype and make people, drive the hatred and anger in people. They pull it out towards them. It's just, I don't know what the fuck he's doing here. He's so hateable, right? And like it's just going to be now all these young people have a very negative association with Israel, especially with the suppression and the things that was happening with Trump suppressing their colleges and their right to free speech, and Charlie Kirk and all these shills going out there. So it's getting shackled up and doing this shilling, and so it's all pretty fucked, right? All right, so let's go to Tucker Carlson here. Okay, so this woman who's interviewing Tucker Carlson on his own YouTube channel. Kind of a weird thing.
Who killed Charlie Kirk?
There's a man in custody. I've really tried not to publicly speculate or say anything that I can't prove.
And you shouldn't. That's smart.
That's it.
No, this totally should speculate. When you say you're speculating, why not speculate? You can't have an opinion about something, right? You speculate on all these other things where you don't have 100% fact. But anyways,
Said, they're going to need to do a real investigation on this. And here's all I'll say. If the FBI and the authorities in Utah end this investigation by declaring Tyler Robinson a lone gunman with no accomplices whatsoever, without having done, a truly exhaustive investigation, sort of like the one they did into January 6th,
Right.
that will not be adequate. That will not be acceptable.
no, it means that your president is corrupt, and so is your FBI and everything else. It means that they're part of it. It's a planned fake thing, just like you won't admit to Trump's assassination being faked when it was totally obviously faked. But it means that everybody's compromised. If they shit out this patsy like they've done so many times in the past, something that's unbelievable, and they just force it on the American people without any kind of real evidence and a real trial where this kid gets to speak, and like we should be able to hear from this kid. Like, you should be able to hear somebody defend themselves when you have people calling for his death penalty and convicting him, and in Erika Kirk's case, forgiving him, right? Like it's totally fucked when you have all that shit, and and then you don't let the kid speak up for himself. He isn't gonna he gets deplatformed, but everyone else can say he's guilty before with minimal evidence, and he knows everyone has got to know that this is bullshit. Anyone with half of a pulse, right? He knows, Tucker Carlson knows, so he wouldn't be saying this. And so that means that this is a setup and it's a planned thing. And it's fucking Charlie Kirk's death was somehow a conspiracy, right? They're covering it up like JFK. We've seen this before, and you don't want to speculate, like.
And I think that they will risk further fracturing the United States along the lines of people who believe the story or want to believe the story, and those who just don't find it an adequate explanation. So I hate even to say that could happen, because it's my country, my government. I want to trust the FBI. There's no reason to trust the FBI at all.
Then why do you want to trust them? Like they're not. What do you mean they're not trustable? Nobody in the government is. You're not trustable. Like fucking no one in the media is. If you're a mainstream person, you're not trustable. If you're a fucking normal person that's not mainstream, you're still not trustable. Like, how many people do you actually feel like you could trust 100%, right? Not even because of their intentions, but because they're crazy. Like, people just don't see reality the way it needs to be seen. You can't count on people being, it's just you can't. Like, even yourself, right? How many people trust themselves? Like, like how many people trust themselves to make the right decision, to not gamble or not cheat or not, any number of things, right? So, people are untrustworthy. They don't even trust themselves, right?
At all. They've been caught acting in bad faith and conducting what I consider crimes so many times, lying so many times, that I think it's, at this point, especially since my friend who was assassinated.
It's his friend. People say that. I don't trust myself, right? You're going to go to the buffet with us? No, I don't trust myself. You're going to go to the bar? No, I don't trust myself, right?
I think it's fair to demand a real investigation with a lot of transparency. And if they say, well, we can't say that because we don't want to prejudice the jury, or, it's going to affect the prosecution, that's not a good answer.
You mean when they said it on Turning Point, a show that you hosted? And that was the first thing they said when they were talking about Candace Owens revealing the Charlie Kirk's text, saying that Israel's, bullying him and he's not tolerating it, so he's going to cut ties with them. And then 2 days later, he was killed. And people said that he thought he was going to be killed. She says that she's talked to people who said that he felt like Israel's going to kill him. So you're not talking about that either. We're just on Turning Point where they said, we don't want to prejudice the investigation when it's already been prejudiced because people are talking about him like he's been convicted. He could sue Trump and he could sue Erika Kirk for talking about him like he's been convicted.
Tell me what happened. I'm particularly interested in, of course, all the practical details. There's no videotape of this guy getting on the roof. There's no videotape of him bringing the gun.
All right. So, I was hoping he would talk a little bit more about Israel. Let's see if he does.
On the roof. It's not clear he brought the gun off the roof. It's not in videotape anyway. So I'm interested in, like, how did he get away, for example? Who was this guy Zin in the front row?
George Zinn, yeah. Why would anyone
What is
do
that? Is that connected?
A guy who got charged with pedophilia and he dropped his pants and he said, "Arrest me." That guy.
Did, like, tell me a story that makes sense. But what I'm most interested in is how a guy who was, by all appearances, a pretty normal kid, wound up murdering a stranger just a couple years later. Like, he was radicalized. Okay, walk me through that. Tell me.
Yeah, and then what about his letter to his transgender lover where he confesses everything and he writes it like, like it's a Harlequin romance. He's a 20-year-old kid. The whole thing is fucked. Right? It's fucked. And, it's always been fucked. It's just the next thing that they're just going to shit out an incredible, a non-credible and incredible official story that's just not believable. And we just have to eat it because they'll never tell you the truth. And so that's what's going to happen. Like everything you said, I hope they don't do that. They're going to do that. Like they've already done it, right? So just fucking say what you think, right? That's all you have. Okay, so I just saw a YouTube recommended video where Alex Jones did an interview with Tucker Carlson, the shill Alex Jones. I need my dad to read. Alex Jones. And he was talking about the Antifa hit list and they're coming to your home kind of thing, right? That fear-based bullshit. I'm sure Tucker let it slide because, he's in on that shit. But I just want to say this, and I should say this quite often. There are things that happen in society. Like if this Charlie Kirk shooter thing is a patsy, like we all think, it's fake, that means everybody's in on it. If Trump's assassination attempt was fake, which, a lot of us believe it was, that means everyone's in on it. The left-leaning media, the Democrats, like everybody. There are things that they let slide. There are things that Trump let slide. I mean, the whole thing with the gender stuff, transgender stuff, Trump didn't say shit about it his first 4 years. It happened because of him. Like he was a catalyst because the left was so flipped out over a Trump presidency. And they were radicalized. And Trump just let it go. So there are things that are COVID. The COVID vaccine. These things that happen, all the stuff with pharmaceutical companies getting money, all that stuff. It shows you that the whole system, both sides are compromised, right? This whole left-right paradigm thing. And this is one of those events. If this Charlie Kirk shooter, usually be the right-wing people. In fact, it is a lot of right-wing people, like real ones, real, QB people, whatever. We're calling bullshit on the official story. But the left-wing isn't doing it. So they're in on it, right? So, and Tucker Carlson's, and they're all in it. Like, I don't want to speculate. Of course you do. You speculate all the time. So it shows you like everybody on both sides is compromised, right? There's no deep state. It's all deep state. Okay.
Growing anger in Israel over the delayed return of the remains of hostages still being held by Hamas, an issue which could threaten the fragile ceasefire just days after it began.
Okay, so I don't know if the ceasefire is going to hold. They don't have much more to destroy there. But, if this falls apart, then, Trump has got to be like, fuck you to Netanyahu. They'll try to blame Hamas, and, the Hamas is, it's an Israeli asset. Like, I can't prove that, but I say it all the time. But let's say it isn't an Israeli asset. Israel has bombed 80% of the country, and they said Hamas is living in basically sewers and tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip. And they had to rat out all these, they have to go out and get all these, go in there and get them. And so if they're bombing these areas and there's hostages being held under these buildings, because they said they didn't know where the hostages were, there's a chance that some of these hostages are buried under rubble, or they're not even, they weren't, you're there in the first, whatever it is, right? And so, they released all the live hostages, but the dead ones they might not have, right? It's been 2 fucking years. They could just shit out, grab some bones of some, or whatever it is, but they don't, they don't have them. We don't know what they have or don't have, but it isn't like, why would you withhold the dead ones? If you're going to, they're not as much of a bargaining chip as the live ones. So to say that they have them, but they're just not giving them up, right? Like, and if they're spread all over this 20-mile area underground, not keeping track of, the many different dead hostages,
Now, as of this morning, only 8 of the 28 deceased hostages who are in Gaza have been returned to Israel. And the Israeli military says one of those 8 bodies is not an Israeli hostage. Under the terms of the ceasefire,
there's a chimpanzee. Are they getting, is it Triceratops? Are they getting bones out of a museum? It's just fucking silly, right? Do they actually have the rest of the bones? Because if they don't, you can't go and just bomb more civilians because Hamas didn't keep track of their dead hostages, right?
Hamas had agreed to turn over the remains of all 28 by midnight on Monday. Now, in retaliation, Israel is restricting aid to Gaza. Families of those hostages are also demanding more action from the Israeli government.
They're restricting aid, so they won't let the Gaza people, all the people there, the 2 million people that are there, or whatever is left of them, and children, they can't receive aid. They won't allow aid in. Jesus fucking Christ. And then, can you be more inhumane? Can you be more of a piece of shit as a country? Just horrific. That's not that's not an equivalent policy. These people that are there, they're not going to, they don't have houses, they don't have infrastructure, they don't have food and water and all these things.
Who they accuse of moving on now that the deal for the living hostages is done.
It was like the game is over. Now let's celebrate, the party's done, let's move on to the next thing. And we were saying, no, that's not the case. My son is no less of a hostage than those that came out yesterday. Yes, we're very happy for those families that are being able
What kind of accents does he have? It sounds like something you'd hear in a bad Saturday Night Live sketch.
hug their loved ones. But my son is entitled just as much to come out and for my family to have the closure that it expects to receive.
CNN's Selma
Can you dab your eye like Erika Kirk?
Abdulaziz joins me now.
All right, so Jesus Christ. Okay, so I got some stuff about how Turning Point failed to do the Red Out after trying to get everyone to merch up. And, there's a video clip of Trump and Erika Kirk walking to the podium, to the memorial ceremony. And this person put that shitty song by Lee Greenwood in. And the same person did this. So Erika, but, not realizing that they're exposing something here. So Erika Kirk comes out here, big limo of people. And, there she is, like she's been helped out, right? Now, you can see she is not at all sad. She isn't grieving. Like she's, you have to go about your life. And after 5 weeks, and especially since she was faking it the first day, she came out, was giving speeches day after, performing video and everything, all the stuff, very performative. You see, though, there she's smiling. She's kind of there to smile, light condition. And smiles here again, right, smiling. And so she's not, grieving, right? She's not, it's the whole performance. She's going in there, and you can see there's no, she's not dabbing her eyes. She's not like, oh my God, how can I hold it together? It's just so fake what she does. And it isn't, for us, she isn't hurting us. This performance is always for their fans, right? You take advantage of your fans, your audience, your supporters. It's, if you have an audience, how do you treat them, right? You manipulate them and steal their money. And she got $2.5 million of martyr money, right? She's getting all that martyr money. And, she's destroying this whole thing. They've mishandled the whole, she's got the people that want to believe. They want to, think that she's sad. Just like I said with Bibi. Bibi is hurting the Jewish people across the world because he's he is the face of the Jewish community. And he's so hateable, and he's so obnoxious and, unrelenting and that's just, taking no responsibility for what they've done to the Palestinian people. And, it's all the like nice, good Jewish people who are against what he's doing, they're not. No one's going to give a shit about that, right? So, like, you're hurting the people that you're supposed to be representing, right? And she's doing that like by just this fake shit, and the whole whatever they're going to destroy this turning point thing, because only the dumbest of the dumb are going to stick around for that shit. And when when the grieving party is over, she's very unlikable. Like, so she's not somebody who could carry an audience. And, she has she has the Don Lemon effect where she has some notoriety and she has an organization. She's been made famous, but she hasn't done it on her own. Like, she wasn't, likable enough that she could carry an audience, right? It's the amount of people they need to pay $22 million a year in payroll. And Israel really doesn't need them anymore like they did. But she's just all light and happy, right? And playing that song, like, I'm proud to be American, where at least I know I'm free. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? Right? Like, compared to what, to other countries? Because in America, you're not free. Like, no one's free. Freedom's an illusionary concept, right? And, if you're a godly person, you have to sacrifice what you want to do the right thing, right? Like, that's the reason why people don't want to be godly people. That they don't want to sacrifice what they want to do the right thing. Like, people want to indulge all the time. And, you have the freedom to do wrong. Like, that's what people have. But there's consequences for it. So it's not even like that's even free. But you have the freedom to do the wrong thing. And, that's not real freedom, because, you end up having to pay for all those wrong choices one way or another. It comes with a consequence. Every time you do the thing that your soul doesn't, you have one right choice in every situation, the choice of your soul and God. And if you don't make that choice, then there's consequences. And, it sucks, but that's the way it is, and people don't like it. But they still want to make that wrong choice. So, like, it's a silly idea. Freedom, like this whole idea about freedom. When you're working for God, you just have to do what God wants you to do, whether you like it or not. And your ego, more often than not, is not going to like it. And sometimes your ego just doesn't like it because it wants to, it just doesn't want to be limited, right? So Charlie Kirk was Scottish. Kirk is a Scottish name, and somebody was talking about it. I don't know if he's 100% Scottish, but he was, they talked about his fiery temper. And there is a Scottish Rite Freemasonry. There is a couple movies about that. That one Scottish actor, the guy who starred in whatever his name is, that M. Night Shyamalan thing with the Split, the movie Split. And then he was in a movie called Filth. And he played a Scottish police officer who was really corrupt, and Freemasonry was a big part of it. But so I'm saying that because he's using the color of red. And they're supposed to have this red out, right? And so they were saying in these all this merch that they were putting out, and this thing is up to his wife's. They got rid of that, I guess. The donation for his wife has ended at $2.5 million. And Charlie Kirk, and remember, they want everyone to wear red on his birthday. And so there was all this merch that was there. This loving memory here. It's a t-shirt, whatever it is. You buy it here, and all this other stuff here. Faith, family, freedom. Your voice matters. Oh, I won't fucking that bullshit. How did I end up there? Anyways, they have all their merch. I don't know where. Is it support TPS USA? They have the straight up donations, and they have shopping over here. And they have okay, so I don't want your fears, fucking, I want your merch. But they had this freedom t-shirt. They had all these things on sale, and they're trying to get people to buy this shirt and wear it everywhere. And anybody who did that got completely played, because here on his YouTube channel, this was a piece of the Middle East. This was the day before And then this video here with Scott Bessent, they had to wear suits. And then, of course, this thing that happened, this memorial thing that happened, everyone had to wear suits. He wore a red tie, but his wife couldn't wear red out. She didn't wear red. And the people on the show, and they didn't even mention it, right? They didn't even mention the red out thing. And so, they had all this shit. She was crying quite a bit, laughing and crying and doing her Erika Kirk type stuff, dabbing her eyes, all that stuff. There she goes. Do it, Erika. Nobody does it like you. But they had this red out, and if you got played and you bought a T-shirt and you wore red, there was no place for them to talk about it. They didn't have a live red out event. They didn't go someplace. They didn't show a video of all the people who wore red, and they really can't now because they were busy at this thing. I mean, they're just disorganized and they just absolutely suck. A complete fail on the red out. And so, when they're pushing for something and then they just forget about it. Oh yeah, we didn't even, they don't even acknowledge it on the day that you're supposed to do it. Like they should have made a short video saying, look, we were going to do this red out thing. And if you did it, great, support it, send in your pictures and we'll cover it tomorrow or whatever it is, or we'll leave a link. You guys can submit pictures to Facebook or something, and we'll show them and we'll talk about Charlie, whatever it is. Like they had to do something. It's another bullshit thing anyway, but they just pretended it didn't happen. Like everyone buy a red T-shirt for Charlie's birthday and fucking support TPUSA, and then we'll all wear red. And there's people who went out and did that. And they look like fools because nobody else did it. Like it's, I worked in this restaurant, and there was a waitress that I got along with, but everyone else kind of disliked. There's people who were talking about quitting, and she went and told the manager that everyone's talking about quitting, and a bunch of people took offense to that. She was trying to get the owner not to have a conversation, whatever. They end up firing the managers, the whole thing. But there was a bunch of younger people, and I was older. I was like 29. There's a bunch of people like in their early 20s, college kids, and this woman was like 25. And it was Halloween, and she wore a cat outfit with a tail and tights, and nobody else, no customer or no other employee wore any kind of costume. So the whole night, she was the only one dressed up. And it's like, that's the kind of thing, like, it was funny. And, it was, and this is the kind of thing we're talking about here, right? There's a red out where, no, you're the only one wearing red and everyone else isn't doing it because they had this other bullshit thing they did. And she's up there fake crying again. All right, so that's enough for today. I'll continue this on tomorrow. This was a video they posted right before where they could have had the opportunity to talk about the red out. I didn't watch the video, but, even if they did, they failed on the day, right? But they don't ever stop shilling.
All right. Welcome to the Charlie Kirk Show. I'm Andrew Colvett, executive producer of this fine show. We have peace in Gaza and in Israel. It is a wonderful day, a day that Charlie Kirk himself would have been extraordinarily pleased by, excited about, and
just so bad.
Really celebrating in a huge way. And so we are going to be doing that in his stead today. Again, I'm Andrew Colvett. I'm joined by Raheem Kassam from thenationalpulse.com. Welcome, Raheem. Thank you. You're going to be with us maybe the whole show. We'll see, at least the first hour. And, of course, Blake Neff, the not-so-secret weapon of the Charlie Kirk Show. By the way,
so there was no hour. Like,
really great job hosting on Friday. That was amazing. I got to spend some time with my family, and it was much appreciated. So great job to you and Mikey and Danny.
Thank you very much.
This is like when, and he did a much better job of this. Dick Cheney, when he was George W. Bush put him in charge of finding his vice president, and he recommended himself. This guy's the producer, so he's the guy deciding all these things. And I don't know if he was ever on the show with Charlie. Like, I mean, I could scroll back through, and maybe he played a role, and he was, I mean, I didn't see Charlie with anybody else but people he interviewed, but I haven't watched many of his videos. So maybe this guy has some, time as Charlie's sidekick, his Robin, his Ed McMahon. But Robin doesn't become Batman, right? It doesn't happen. And Ed McMahon didn't host the Tonight Show after Johnny Carson left. The sidekick doesn't get promoted, and the producer doesn't get promoted, right? The producer doesn't come in and say, I think I can do this job. And maybe in some cases, it's like Jerry Jones being the general manager of the Dallas Cowboys. It's been a disaster, right? When he started making football decisions, and he's never been good at it. Like he's made a few of them, but I mean, it shows that they're not a good. They haven't been in any sort of serious contention for the Super Bowl in 30 fucking years, right? And it was only when they had Jimmy Johnson who created that first team for Jerry Jones, and then that was the team that ended up going to the Super Bowl multiple times or winning Super Bowl 3 times. Anyways, you get the idea. So, he's not good at this job.
So we have peace. I was riveted. I was by the TV this morning watching this historic moment come through the television, watching it from afar. Trump addressing the Knesset, Bibi Netanyahu addressing the Knesset. It was a remarkable display, something that I think we actually have unanimity in opinion across both the left and the right and internationally that Trump was uniquely positioned to bring about the hostages coming home.
This was going to happen at some point when they did the destruction phase, right? They had to end this. At some point, Israel's got to be like, well, you can't take any more shit for this. And they had done everything they needed to do there. They destroyed 80% of the fucking country. It's ready to be rebuilt. And, whatever this, bogus peace deal, there's already stuff happening. There's, here, let's go to that video. So, this show sucks, right? Like, these guys, they're just not getting it. They're on the wrong side of everything. They're trying to stick with the Charlie Kirk of 2 years ago. And now people on the right are turning on Israel and even turning on Trump and the Epstein thing. And they're just, these guys aren't truthers. And Charlie Kirk was more of a truther. He still wasn't a truther, but, right-wing truther. But they're not even flirting with any of that stuff. Charlie Kirk said controversial things, and they're just trying to ride, whatever momentum he had created for them, and it was created for them. But Israel's going to be not shilling out as much money, right? They're not going to put out as many shekels out there for people, and so they have a $20 million payroll amongst other expenses, and they're not going. You're not going to get there on 20,000 views, and and dropping down from there, right? Okay, so I got this, and I have a meme, and I have Trump talking about if the peace will hold after he's gone, and then him going to hell. Let's start here, in no particular order. So these guys, they're playing Sweet Home Alabama in Israel. So, the guy can't sing, but they've rearranged the lyrics. So this was a southern rock song. So he says, Torah scrolls keep on turning.
Just 2 days and we are through. Then we start from the beginning.
Just...
Hashem's holy words begin anew.
Hashem's holy words begin anew. I'm not sure what Hashem's holy words are, but they're not probably very good for the Palestinian people. I don't think Hashem was blessing the Palestinian people. So, Hashem's holy words. In Judaism, the phrase Holy Hashem's holy words, promised land, refers to the promise made by God, often called Hashem, to Abraham, that descendants that would inherit the land of Israel. The holy words are found in the Torah and other Jewish texts which contain this divine promise. All right, so they're talking about the Holy Land here, right? So that they're about to get the Holy Land. So this was never about, like, these guys are performing a song which was that we're reclaiming our Holy Land. So this was never about Hamas, right? They're not talking about, oh, we got rid of Hamas and, boy, those guys were bad to us. It's talking about them reclaiming the promised land, which he's going to say again at the end.
We all have come to help Hatzalah, and we want to
What's Hasala? So Hadsala is supposed to be a group of people that provide medical health to anybody, regardless of a race or religion. And yet he's talking about the promised land, right? So this is the organization.
And we want to help it thrive. Based right here in God's holy city. Throughout this land, it's saving lives. Sweet home, Yerushalayim.
It's supposed to be Jerusalem.
Yeah, where God's words ring so true. Sweet home, Yerushalayim. Lord, I'm coming home to you. Well, friends and friends don't think it's Jewish. The United Nations call us crooks.
The United Nations call us crooks.
But Donald Trump claims it's all Israel. Just as it says in all the holy books.
So that was a huge line. So Donald, look at him. He's looking at it right here. He's looking at him. So he's saying it's all Israel, just like it says in all the holy books. Those books are not holy. They're fucking. That's not about God. The Old Testament, they don't worship it. The demon they worshipped is not God. He wants the God demanding child sacrifices from his most loyal followers, petty, narcissistic, vengeful, just a piece of shit, like a horrible person. Like the God in the Old Testament's not even a good person. Never mind a divine being, not a godly person, but somebody petty, fucking violent, wanting violent shit. There's all this violence and weird fucking shit and like cutting off foreskins and all that shit in the Old Testament. It's a weird book. People that would worship such a God would feel inferior and constantly waiting for the God to punish them, right? Like just feeling like pieces of shit, violent and all these things. Like it's just the way that you think about God is important. Because there's no claim to God. You can't copyright God or trademark God and say, oh, we have a Christian God and we have a Muslim God and we have a Hindu God. And, we have God is God, right? Like there's no organization that can claim to have exclusive rights to God. I mean, that's how they sell it in Christianity. But the God of the Old Testament is just a demon. Like it's just they don't worship a divine essence of love, right? They worship a fucking brutal. This is why they're so violent. These cultures that's where it all stems from. All these cultures, the Muslim and the Christian and Jewish cultures are all like they have a violent streak from all the and a low self-esteem from the depravity of the whole thing, right? And so it's a shitty book. But in that shitty book, there is there's the idea of the promised land. So, I was one of the few people that, I don't know if anybody else talks about that, so you guys would know. Like I wouldn't. But I looked up what was Greater Israel in the promised land. So, because what they call Israel now is not the promised land, right? So, here is Israel. Like this is right here. This is Israel and Palestine. Right here, this area here. And you have Syria and Lebanon. So there's two countries. It would get almost all of Syria, all of Lebanon, and then all this coastal Mediterranean Sea and some of Turkey. So that's three countries that would have to give up land. This is what they say Donald Trump. This is what Charlie Kirk said, the biblical land rights, right? That this fucking shitty old book that's not about God, that shouldn't even exist and shouldn't be a part of a religion. And then half of Iraq, I think this must be Jordan over here, all of Jordan, all of Saudi Arabia, and then Egypt. And so that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 countries that would have to give up land. And they're saying Donald Trump believes in this, which is problematic because he believes that they should reclaim all this land. And the land that they're reclaiming is land that they don't want to give up, right? Like, people aren't going to want to give up oceanfront. They're not going to want to give up any land. No country wants to give up their land. So, like, this is, it's not about just taking Palestine. I mean, all of this, right? This whole area. And they'd have to be such a dominant superpower because, these are big countries with a lot of army. And, I mean, the world and the United Nations isn't gonna, like, this is going to be an issue. Like, how would they go about something like this? But they're singing in the song, like, this is all biblical, Charlie said, biblical land rights. Charlie Kirk, that was one. I believe in the biblical land rights. You do? Yes, you're fucked in the head, right? Like, this is not something you can do. Like, you're not, it's a shitty book. Like, it's not even a real fucking book.
Go ahead, Peter. Let's go.
What does it tell you about the world that it seems like you got a much better reception in Israel than you would get in, like, New York City right now?
I think I get a great reception in New York City.
I'm not saying that you don't, but it was on another level today.
Yeah, you're right. It was incredible. But I went to the Bronx, and we had 31,000 people in a park in the Bronx in New York City during the campaign. 31,000, if you remember that. And it was...
Yeah, it was incredible. Everyone loves you. Everyone's 100% supportive. 90% of people in America love you. You're the best ever. What are you talking?
The friendliest crowd you've ever seen. And very diverse, but it was really something. New York is good. It's good.
New York City, bad example, but it was, I don't know if you can see...
Are you admitting you made a mistake? I don't believe it. This is breaking news.
Yeah, no, that'd be breaking news if you admitted you made a mistake.
First rule of politics, never admit a mistake.
Never.
But it was, in the motorcade, I don't know if you can see, there were people hanging out of every apartment balcony inside the Knesset.
The Knesset was amazing. Like, the Knesset was like, it was unbelievable.
Okay, so I've heard, like, they said if you did Russia or if you did, lots of different combinations, they say the Middle East blows it away. And I said, well, by experts. It's just thousands of years, nothing's been done. It's the whole thing with the Arabs, Jewish people, this and everybody. It's just never been done before.
I mean, it's amazing that he's calling this a peace deal, right? Like, this is giving Israel everything they wanted and then making a deal with the neighbors around them, whatever it is, not to retaliate towards Israel, which may or may not happen because, whatever. But, they want the biblical land rights, so, like, that's the problem for the rest of the people. And they have money and, they have 2 billion people, the Muslims. I mean, it's a bigger deal.
There's a certain mystery to the Middle East. I mean, look, it's only because of ratings. You're only as good as the ratings, right? If they weren't getting ratings, your people at Fox would. And by the way, Trey is excellent.
He does a really good job.
Really good.
He and his whole team.
We did a very quick interview. I was running to the second one where we were pretty late.
Something that we heard from some Israelis on the ground, they want to know how the peace holds when you are not the president. So 3 years from now...
I can't answer it. I know this, and you are all witnesses.
Yeah, I can totally answer it. It's not, right? Because no Democrat or no other politician or Republican is going to give them what you gave them. I mean, maybe a Republican, and maybe they get a Democrat in there, I don't know. But, like Trump gave away the farm. That's why they have a deal, because Israel won't, they're the problem, right? I mean, the other countries hating Israel, that's whatever it is, right? That's, it's a country that shouldn't exist because it's, without being bankrolled and protected by America, it can't exist. The only thing that's keeping it going is America's protection. It's surrounded by enemies on all sides, and it's a small little country. And they have people in there. They have all these Palestinian people that live inside of Israel, and now, Israel glomming all this land. So, I mean, it's doomed to failure. And the amount of money and resources America has to pour into that country just to keep it going. And America's crumbling, so it's not sustainable. It never was. And they don't have their own source of income. I mean, it's just a mess, like I've talked about this. But,
We go, and I get 25,000, 35,000. If you look at a normal president, we'll get 300 people, and that's not bad. They'll go to a ballroom, they'll get 300 25, we had 117,000 people in New Jersey. And so I can't tell you what's going to happen, but I'll be out there fighting for whoever it may be.
Yeah, there's going to be Democrats. I mean, we'll see what happens in the midterms, but I would assume, unless the Democrats just shit out an unelectable person, which, they're totally capable of doing, there's going to be a Democratic president next time. And a lot of people who are just not feeling Israel, right? Like, they're not wanting to support them. And we'll see how this all plays out because, the thing never goes in a way where the people have a say in things, right? But we'll see what happens. When somebody asks me my political views, I say, fuck the government, both sides. So that was a Facebook meme, which, the left-right paradigm. The left-right paradigm is the only real truth there. If you're seeking the truth, the left-right paradigm is the only. There's deeper things in the left-right paradigm, but if you're still thinking that one party is better than the other, you're not a truther. You're not. You're not. I mean, you shouldn't even be here on this channel, but I mean, it doesn't matter. You can be here. What the fuck? What difference does it make? It's not like, as long as you don't say stupid shit, you're fine. But like, it doesn't matter. Like, this is not like some kind of exclusive country club or some shit. But like, if you don't understand that both sides are controlled, and that one side appeals to you more than the other at certain times, or certain people appeal to you, like they say things like, there's people who produce truthful things, like Tucker Carlson does a good thing, and then he does something like, batshit crazy, all this stuff, Candace Owens and these people. But even like, you can agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene some of the time, or AOC might say something, like occasionally all the politicians might agree. Like, it's not about agreeing with your beliefs. And that's another thing. Like, if you think people agreeing with your beliefs is why you should connect with them and listen to them, it's 100% wrong. Because your beliefs are meaningless, and, we all have our beliefs and prejudices and things. I mean, whatever I said in the beginning of this video, the original, I think it was this video. Like, I don't even know anymore. Might have been last video, who knows. But that thing I said about how, there's a level of, the prejudice that people have, and whatever it is. You've either heard it in this video or the last video. But, this idea that there is a good side in a system that is binary by its very design. They want you to be in one or two categories, one or two groups. And that's all it is. It's a thing that, within one of those two groups, there's something in there that's going to represent something that you feel strongly about. It could be abortion, right, on either side. It could be, Israel. It could be, any number of these things. It could be the economy. It could be, various policies, right? It could be transgender stuff. It could be gay rights. It could be, gay marriage. It could be any of these things, right? Like things on either side. Like you might feel one way, and when you identify with that party that feels the way you do, and then the other people feel that, it's like the people are split down the middle on some of these issues, not maybe necessarily the middle, but they have these issues, and like people think they're voting for what they want to have happen. But you can't believe political promises. I mean, everyone should know that. And even if you could, it's not about that. And so when you listen to people and you're like, well, this guy agrees with me, I'm going to listen to him more. Yeah, it's a bad way to go about it, because, you already know what you believe, right? Why do you need people to confirm what you believe? I mean, in terms of the stuff that, like, everyone else is saying you're full of shit and you need some, it's nice to hear somebody who can articulate things and, make you feel good about your decision, especially if it's the right point of view. When everyone's against you, societal and the majority of people in the truth community, and you hear somebody and they articulate things and then make you feel, it may give you more resolve in your point of view. That's a good thing. But the majority of stuff in the truth community should be about expanding your horizons and seeing different points of view and looking deeper into things, and that's where the value should be there. But most people just want to stay put with their beliefs and want to have people mirror back to them how great they are. That's why Trump has an audience. That's why Trump has been successful with the dumb fucks, because they haven't had anybody tell them that they're not full of shit, right? And so, a lot of these things. And so this is, I mean, that's where you get the majority of people, like people who don't have the capacity to change and expand their consciousness and be pushed and coached, in these things, like be moved to a higher level and to expand. And that's, that's just undervalued. Anyways, one more thing of Trump here. So this is from the White House, on the White House's YouTube channel. And it seems like he gave exclusive. There seems to be maybe a few other reporters here, but mostly Peter Doocy.
You were doing an interview and you talked about how you hope to end the war in Ukraine because it might help you get into heaven. How does this help? Does this help?
I mean, I'm being a little cute.
A little cute, bro.
I don't think there's anything going to get me in heaven. Okay, I really don't. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound. I may be in heaven right now as we fly in Air Force One. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make heaven, but I've made life.
Okay, so why is that? Like, that's a fucked up thing to say, right? Like he's joking about it, but like, yeah, it's like a real thing. Now, there's future lives and past lives. So heaven, the way that Christians think about it, doesn't exist. There's higher levels of, where you get liberated from planet Earth. And then you move on to a less tumultuous existence at a higher level of consciousness. And then you can merge into the source. So there's these things, these different stages along your spiritual journey. And there's wonderful, places, etheric places, which you have to, those places can be traps in themselves because, you don't move on from the bliss, right? But in terms of this idea of heaven or hell, it doesn't exist because of the idea of past lives and future lives, right? Like it's something they've just made up so that they can say that they have exclusive rights to your afterlife. I mean, that's what Christianity is selling you, is a afterlife. Like it's giving you a, like a vacation, like a timeshare. It's like we're selling you two possibilities for afterlife. And we can help you avoid you. Right now, you're going to the fucking bad one. Unless we help you, unless you accept our terms and conditions, you won't get into the good one. And so, it's not a real thing. But for Trump to say that means he's consciously aware of sinning, and not, if he's doing God's work, then it'd be great. If all these things are bringing peace to the world and all this braggadocious shit that he claims, if it's true, then, it wouldn't. Let's go back here a little bit. But like he's saying, that he knows he's doing evil shit. Like he knows he's doing corrupt fucking, whatever it might be. See what he got here. Go a little bit back. Here we go.
Anything going to get me in heaven? Okay, I really don't. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound. I may be in heaven right now as we fly in Air Force One. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make heaven, but I've made life a lot better for a lot of people. And as an example, had the election of 2020 not been rigged, you would have millions of people living just...
Okay, again, he's talking about how those wars wouldn't have happened. But, again, if he's taking accountability for the whole thing, it was the Operation Warp Speed, which is a disaster, but then the way he got worked on the election, closing down the economy, all the stuff he did for COVID, those are the things that caused 2020 to happen. If he didn't close down the economy, then they wouldn't have been able to do the mail-in ballots. So if it was rigged the way he says, and I believe that there's a case to be made, it's always rigged, so whatever. It's just whatever it is. But the stuff that Biden did or didn't do, that he always claims that it would have went better, it's a nightmare what he's created here. And, we might have avoided the Trump second-term nightmare because he's all angry and going after people. But he's created a dystopian, fucking politicized, violent, martial law type situation, and he's way over his, what his powers of the presidency. He's just gone over, and the Democrats have no fucking answer, right? And it's bad because like once things get evil, which I said in that voiceover, it's either at the beginning of this video, the one about like the assassins and things like this, or my last video. But once you go to the dark side, you can't go back and be more innocent. Like it's just Like that's how you do business. Like once you go and be like scumbaggery and cutthroat criminality, like that's how it works. And so this is going to be politics. Like Trump has produced a stain on the political system and the social system that it's not going back in the box, right? It isn't like, all right, we can go back and be good people and like forget what happened with Trump. It's just like he's lowered the standards, and now that's just going to be where the politics is.
In Russia, Ukraine alone, that would have never happened, and it didn't happen for 4 years. And I knew Putin very well. It was the apple of his eye. That all the things I've said would have never happened. We had an incompetent administration.
All right, so but all right, he's not getting to heaven. Okay, so Trump's not getting into heaven. So I made a standalone voiceover, which I'm calling Rock Bottom. And that might be, I make all these voiceovers. I don't know where I put them. After like a couple days, it could be anywhere in any number of videos. And that's why I include them in the Journey series so that they're at least in a place where they're, for the members, that there's going to be some permanent, documentation of things that are more of a spiritual nature. But in terms of all these things, there is beliefs that people have that, like the biblical beliefs, like all these people who are Christian and Jewish who believe that God promised them this land. And if you believe that God promised you something, which it doesn't, God doesn't promise shit. God doesn't have a mind. There's no fucking dealings. It's not any kind of, there's nothing like that. Like that's not God. That's, that's your ego or demon or whatever it is. But whatever it is, it's not God, right? You don't get promised something. Like they don't make promises. There's no, and the only promise is that you're always going to have God's love. Like that's a permanent, and you can't exist without it. You can't exist here, and you can't exist as a soul without that. Like not just on a physical plane, but on a spiritual plane, because God's love is the medium of all creation, right? It's where all creation began in the subtle thought and the subtle energy of God's love. That's where everything stems from. But what you have with these Christians and, these Zionists, all these Zionists, evangelical Christians and Zionists, people like, Mike Huckabee and frickin' Charlie Kirk and the rest of them, all these people who believe in the biblical land rights, as Charlie Kirk put it when he talked to Megyn Kelly, and you believe in manifest destiny, that, that we have, God has given us permission to do whatever we want with the world because we're Christians and we're spreading His word and we have exclusivity. These people think that their thing is right and everybody else's thing is wrong. I mean, the Christians think they're saving everybody because of their bullshit belief in, that Jesus is the only Son of God and that's the only way to get to heaven. And that all, this whole thing with Trump in heaven. So when you believe stuff like that, then everyone else is like an NPC and you're saving them and they should be grateful for you. And your missionaries going and, abusing their children and, all the things that they did. Nuns and people, taking away their culture to the native peoples, all this bullshit stuff by force. And, it's a fucked up thing. Like it's a fucked up belief and it's 100% wrong. I talk about how my mom saw those Ottawa Indians, Native American, Ottawa tribe, and, in Canada. And she was like, I can't believe these people are going to hell, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course they're not going to hell. What are you? Like I was like 14, 13 years old, 11, 12, I don't know. And I didn't think much of it in the time, but I revisited it when I had all these dopey Christians coming to my channel and saying John 3:16. Because, whatever you believe in Christ and Christianity, that's the fucked up thing. That's the bullshit teaching that Christians cling to, that they're the only ones getting into heaven, everyone else is going to hell. And so that's made the world a fucked up place. 2 billion Christians are the ones who believe that, because then you're justified in doing anything to these people who are all going to hell, because you can just save them in fucking air quotes. You're not saving shit, right? And so, and the people who use that to exploit people. And so, like, it's if you are doing what you're supposed to do on a soul level, then you're advancing and you're moving forward. And that's all you should be thinking about. Like, there's things in the Sajmark system. There's the goal of liberation and the goal of Layavasa Mukti, which is liberation in Sanskrit. And that's the freedom from future lives on planet Earth. Like you're bound here until you graduate. So you graduate from planet Earth and then you're liberated. And you no longer have to come down here. If you come down here, it's by choice, and your soul comes down to do very specific work, and you don't have to risk getting caught back here, because there's higher developed souls that have come down here, but they weren't liberated, and they get caught up and they get sucked into the drama on planet Earth, and then they're here and they're just like higher developed souls, just mired away with the rest of the fucking muggles. So, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that can happen, but if you're liberated and you come down to do specific work, you're protected and you just come and you go. Master Charge, he said that there are people who would come and do spiritual work, and then they would just hold their breath until they died and leave. Like, that's just a crazy thing, like a disciplinary thing where they were conscious that their body was just a shell, and they completed the work. It's not suicide. They completed the work that they did, and they would just hold their breath and just their soul would leave and go where it's supposed to go, because they didn't want to stay here longer than they had to. But the key thing here is, your actions. I mean, like if Trump knew anything about Christianity, he would know that if he just accepted Jesus, then all this bullshit he's done, that he thinks he's not heaven material, right? Like he's not right with God. Well, that wouldn't be there. So like he doesn't even, I mean, what is he thinking about? Is it the Jeffrey Epstein stuff? I mean, all that kind of thing. But in terms of, the idea that you're going somewhere good, you're going somewhere bad, like you should know, like, oh, I'm going in the right direction. Like everyone makes mistakes. Everyone's got character flaws. Everyone's got their issues, and the world's a fucked up place, and it's hard to be here, and you have to have whatever protection, whatever things that you have to do just to live and do your work and be a part of society. And so like there's grace to go with that, right? There's some forgiveness to go with, human failings, as long as your intentions are good and you're going the right direction, and you're truly, committed to working for God in some way. Like you're either moving forward, you're moving backward. There's no stagnant position on the spiritual field. You make a mistake and you go off your path for a little bit, or whatever it might be, and even on like a daily basis, like some parts of the day you're going forward, and sometimes you're going backwards. Like I say, you're screwing over. You're either you're making your life better, or in a on a spiritual level as well. More importantly, because that's what we're talking about here. But you can see when you are doing things that are going to make it easier for you later on, or worse for you, depending on your food choices and what you're putting into your body, and what you're consuming in terms of content, right? What's going to help you, feel better and sleep and do all the things that you're doing. Like what things are healthy for you, or people should know what are healthy for them. I mean, some people just don't even know this. What, like in terms of food, and in terms of people that you hang out with, in terms of things that are, make you feel better. What's like bad for you, what's good for you, right? And then on a spiritual level, it's the same thing. Like what you're doing, which is aligned with God's path, and the thoughts you're having, the actions you're taking, the whatever it is. Like people should know that. Like people don't think about it. Like Trump is like, when people are asked that question, they're like, I don't know. I don't like, because they know that they've been fucking off and doing bad shit, right? Someone asks the question and you're like, I guess, I don't know. I'm not attending to that. Like you should know. Because you can have a relationship with God right now, but you're choosing not to, because God's going to tell you shit you don't want to hear. God's going to say, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. Like it's, it's when we're doing things and you're kind of like, you're like little kiddish, and you do something and you kind of aren't like, you go into a stupor, and you're just, you're not like focused, you're not conscious, you're not, aware. I don't like, someone said, left me a comment, said, your channel's helped me a lot. You've taught me a lot about mindfulness. And I'm like, I don't do mindfulness. I do, Sajmark meditation, which is the opposite, where you're forgetting about your body and remembering the divinity within you. But you're attuning to that side of yourself, the spiritual side. Mindfulness is very materialistic. The mindfulness meditation is the opposite of what I do. But if you're, being mindful of your spiritual self, which is not your physical body, and you are, aware and conscious and you're thinking about, your spiritual side, and you're contemplating that, and then you're willfully, connecting to the divinity within you, and you're having, if not conversations, you're having some exchange of ideas and feelings. Like, for me, it's more feeling than anything else. Like, my heart will just say, yeah, this is what you're supposed to do. Like, this is what it is, and this isn't. Like, when I first saw Charlie Kirk, I'm like, oh, this guy sucks. And I said to my wife, this guy sucks. Neither one of us knew anything about him. And then she was like, was hearing all these things on, wherever Reddit things or wherever she is, that in terms of there'd be more Republican people, what a saint he was. And she's like, you sure these people all love him? I'm like, no, he's a piece of shit. I could just tell. Like, I heard him. And he was talking about the link between Jeffrey Epstein and Mossad. So it wasn't like he was saying any bullshit things that it was something that I agreed with. But I could just tell by his character, by his energy, by his consciousness that he was a piece of shit. I'm like, oh, this guy's no fucking saint. This guy's, I mean, and I went in there with an open mind. I didn't have any idea about him. And I had heard that he was moving away from, like, Candace Owens a lot better now, position on Israel. I found her annoying, and I didn't realize because she was from Connecticut, right? And some of her ways that she expresses herself. But I hadn't really listened to her, but she was making sense on Israel, and like she is moving in the right direction. And that's why I heard Charlie Kirk's name from her. And I didn't know, like she said, he was starting to move. This was before I think he died. It was definitely before he died. But, in terms of the clip that somebody sent me, it might have been my wife, about him talking about Israel and Mossad being connected to Jeffrey Epstein. I was like, I didn't disagree with what he was saying. I just felt like the guy was just not a good person, like just, whatever. And then, of course, Charlie Shekels and all these things that I found out later. But, it's just a sense of things, right? Like, your heart is an instrument that you can communicate with God, and God can, help you understand things through just the way your heart feels about things. Like, your heart will be like, you'll be given 3 or 4 choices, and one choice your heart feels, just congruent, and you feel God's love, and you're like, all right, that's the direction I should go to. It's like a divining rod. And the other ones, are less so. And so it's not something that you could, it's your personal heart and your personal experience, and other people can see that you make the right decisions, and so they can trust you in that sense. But it's not something they can experience through you. They have to have their own connection, right? They have to develop their own capacity to make the right decisions. But people make decisions every day, and you have to have a system to figure out which is the right one for you. On a material level, you have your mind, and you can analyze, all right, this is, the best decision for me on a material level. But then on a spiritual level, you need to have something else. You have to have your mind isn't a spiritual instrument. It's like you ask ChatGPT or one of these AI programs to give you all the information about a certain subject, but then you have to decide how you feel about it, right? And you have to filter out the prejudice and the programming that the AI has been given to skew it to more towards the mainstream story. And so then you have to decipher this thing, you have to see it through a truther lens. But in the same way, as a spiritual person, you have to connect with the divinity within you and then see it through that perspective. Because oftentimes the spiritual decision and the material decision, what's best for you materially and what's best for you spiritually, what's best for your ego and what's best for your soul, are not the same thing. They often are conflicted, because you have to sacrifice something on an egotistical level for your spiritual side. And it's just the way it has to go, because if it was easy, everyone would be fucking saints right now. If living your egotistical dream life made you a saint, then everyone would be doing it, right? But even then, people hate themselves and want to punish themselves, and they can't even be happy egotistically, never mind spiritually. But like when you have a decision and you have to trust your heart and your soul, as opposed to what your ego wants to do. When you do the ego thing, there's consequences. When you do what God wants you to do, there isn't, right? So, and you feel better, and so you feel better, and you develop your will force, where you can And that's a big part of the Sajmark system, developing your spiritual will. And then you are able to push back against your gratification, your need for gratification and addictions and things like this, right? Because, there's all these temptations of things that are your ego wants to do, and they're fucking, already going in and having consequences, right? I saw my brother, it must have been right before I started, maybe after I started doing this meditation, and he had done it. And he had left his wife, who had put up with quite a bit from him. He was like a serial cheater. And he, well, she didn't know about, but he was like, cheating all the time, which I didn't know till later on. Like, I didn't know till after he left his wife. But he left his wife, and it was his son's birthday. And he left her for another woman. And, it was a catastrophic mistake. The woman was crazy and just a nightmare. Nobody liked her. And, it's always a bad thing. So, and, it was it was bad for him. But while he was seeing this woman, his neighbor, which was like, he was like probably in his 50s, I was 30 something. So I was 31. So he was 48. So he's almost 50 years old. And he had a 25-year-old girl who had a boyfriend who was living across from him, and he was flirting with her. And, he was telling me, he was trying to get with this girl, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, are you fucking going to make more? Like, his life was a mess. And, like, you can't fucking help yourself, right, bro? Jesus Christ. And, he's older than me. He's like 17 years older than me. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, right? And so we go have lunch with his girlfriend, and he had just heard the term cock block, which was something his son his 20-year-old, college-age son had told him. And he was talking about how we were in the car beforehand, and he was talking about his girlfriend was cock blocking him from this girl, like she knew something was up. And we're like in some fucking diner, and he just says cock block, right? Like his subconscious just spit it out, right? And I start laughing because like his girlfriend, like, what did you say? Why did you say that? Like she was like, she could smell it because she was crazy, but she was like, oftentimes, there's crazy people are psychic or whatever, or something. And she's like, onto him. And, she drove there separately. And we get back in the car. He's like, holy shit, I want to get caught. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, right? I'm like, you should be not doing any of this shit, right? Like, it's just you're making more and more of a mess for yourself. And that's just, materially, never mind spiritually. Like, he had started the meditation and things. And I'm like, at what point do you stop making a mess of yourself and your life because of your addictions and proclivities that always come with these horrific consequences? And so, when you build your will force and you start resisting doing the wrong thing that you really want to do, that your ego just craving is addicted to these, whatever it is. In my brother's case, it was womanizing. It could be drugs, alcohol, but it could be just any number of things. It could be allowing your mind to go to a victim place where you're not being grateful. You're being, a bitch about things, and you're just, having bad thoughts and, things like this that are self-defeating. It could be just something as simple as that, right? Where you're developing the will force to, not to have doubt in your spiritual path and not to succumb to the negative tendencies that you have. And the more you do that, the more you get control of your ego, and the more you start attuning to the divinity within you. And so, like, then, you have a sense of, like, yeah, I've actually kind of gotten better at some of these things. I've mastered. This is what being a spiritual master is. You're mastering yourself. You're mastering the ego within you. You're not giving in to the things that are there to sort of waylay you. Like, because everyone gets these tests and these obstacles, and if you succumb to the obstacles in the test and, you deviate from your spiritual path and you fall, off your path, and then you're like, all right, then you have to get back on it. But, if you can use your will force to learn to use it, that you don't, then you have more confidence. You build, more confidence and faith in not only, God, but yourself. And then you utilize the tools at your disposal to do the right thing and stay on your spiritual path. And then there's no thought of hell or heaven. You know that you're going in the right fucking direction. That if you're going in the right direction, you're going to get to your destination, right? And so it's, falling off that path where you get lost and you don't know where the fuck you're going, right? And then you're like, I don't know if I'm going to heaven or hell. Of course you don't, because you're not fucking, you're not taking responsibility for your whatever it is that you're doing wrong, right? That you're clearly not doing the right fucking thing. Anyways, let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's power, vital, definite importance for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.